All right, folks, let's just start with this. Hi all, I am Pragati.
I am Arihant.
Yeah, so I and Ariant would be walking you through what exactly is GraphQL in this particular talk of ours. So I'll just quickly share the agenda with you guys that what all would be covered as a part of this journey of like 1 hour. So we would be starting with some basics of GraphQL. We'll move on to doing some analogies and some differences of GraphQL with respect to REST APIs, because most of us have already dealt with how exactly REST APIs work. So I guess that would be a good starting point for us as a reference when it comes to GraphQL. So we'll go on with that particular demarcation. Moving forward, we would be having a quick demo of how exactly GraphQL works, what are the different keywords that GraphQL deals with, and then we can actually see what are the pros, what are the cons when we use and when we do a hands-on session on GraphQL, or we extensively use GraphQL in our projects. And apart from that, the culmination of this entire agenda would deal with how exactly us as quality analysts can deal with GraphQL testing. What is the difference in mindset that we would need to have when we test a GraphQL in difference to how exactly we test a REST API. So in short, this is the agenda that we would be covering as a part of this. So without wasting much time of yours. Okay, so the first phrase that comes to my mind when I talk about GraphQL is nothing more, nothing less. In a very short while, I'll be sharing as to why do we feel so that GraphQL signifies nothing more and nothing less. Okay, so let's just, most of us would have worked with APIs. So let's just first see what is the real world analogy of an API. So as you all know, so what exactly an API does is, so you have a client, you have a server or a database. So your API simply gets the request from your client, takes that request over to your server or maybe directly to the database and gets a response. And then this response is given to the client itself. So if you see on the left figure, you would see that there is a client, it is sending out a request. Here we are using a REST API. So this could be a REST API, it could be SOAP, it could be GraphQL. So this is the basic architecture of how exactly an API works. So you see here is the API. It is taking the request to the database. Your database is doing certain manipulations and then sending over this request, the response of the request as a JSON or an XML, depending upon the kind of API you are using. And then the client consumes that response. Okay, so driving an analogy to this, if you simply see here, we can actually compare this to a real world model of a restaurant. So think of the customer as a client. The client sees the menu and requests some ingredients from the API, which in our case is a waiter. So the waiter goes to the kitchen, takes that request to the kitchen and gets a response, which is your food in our case, and delivers this response to your client, which is our customer that you see here. So once we are set with this basic analogy of how exactly API works, let's now move on to how do we differentiate between a GraphQL API and a REST API. All right, so it is a very famous TV show that all of us would be well versed with. So let's just divide this particular slide into two halves. So there is this upper half and then there is a lower half. Let's just first have a look at the upper half of it. So this particular person who is our client in this case says, hey Zoe, can I get spaghetti pasta without meatballs, olives and broccoli? So you would see that this client is making a very customized demand. He wants particular things in his food. To which this waiter, who is Joe in our case, says, sorry Ross, we would not be able to customize. And as a result, what Ross gets is this full bowl of spaghetti with everything and anything that you could possibly see. And now let's just compare this to the lower image that we have here. So we have the same client, we have the same customer with us, but now if you see the waiter is, so as we said that waiter is the API, so here the APIs are different. The second API here says to the same demand, the show Ross whatever you want. And as a result of that, you would see that Ross gets whatever he wanted, without meatballs, without olives, and without broccoli. Whatever he wanted, he got the entire set of things, nothing more and nothing less. Like I told you about that phrase that we talked about like in the previous slide. So that is why we use here, because if you compare the first slide, that is your REST API. You make a request and the entire resource would get fetched for you. Entire resource without any filtration. So you would get everything which is possibly there in your resource, whether you want it or not. You can do all those filtration on your UI. Now that is a different thing, and that is of course performance inducive, because your network would similarly be carrying every data which is not even relevant. Compared to this, if you see, Here you are only getting the amount of data that is required by you and nothing else. Okay, now let's just see very simply what exactly is GraphQL. As the name defined, it is a graph query language. It is a query language, and why do we say that? And why do we say that it is a graph? Because the underneath algorithms that it uses for fetching data are based on those Dijkstra's algorithm and all those graph traversing algorithm, because of which it has got this word graph. And if we talk about query language, so in the upcoming slide, we would be covering as to how do it queries the data and what is the syntax that we use when we actually query or make certain retrieval calls or fetching calls from the server or the database that we're talking about. So put in simple words, it is a very powerful query language. And as you would have seen that it is client driven. So whatever your client demands, it can actually tell on the fly that, okay, this is what I want. And please give me only this amount of data. I do not want anything else. If I'm asking you to give me only the name of a particular user, I do not want to have the IDs, or I do not want to have the age of the user. I just need to have the name of the user, and just please give me that. Because of which that would actually make that API very flexible and efficient to approach. Also, the performance would increase. All right, so driving an analogy, this is a very basic example. We would not go deep into it. We would go deep into it once we do the demo part of it. Let's just simply take a look at this for like 30 seconds and try to see what are the differences that we see from the REST API when we work in GraphQL. So on the left-hand side, REST APIs, this is something that all of us would have used. So put in simple words, whenever you want to retrieve data, whenever you want to fetch data from your resource, what do? You make a get call. A simple get call is all you do. You put on your domain and then you put on your API. So if you see here, you have a get call, which is domain.com/TV series, which is fetching you the TV series, all the TV series which are present in your database, and possibly all the fields, all the attributes that particular TV series has. So if you see here, you could see that the list has 3 elements in it. And each element has certain amount of fields. In our case, the fields are ID, name, genre, characters, and so on and so forth. So these are all the fields that you're getting. Now let's just take a moment and move on to the next thing, which is the GraphQL example that we can see here. If you see, we are making a post call here, and there is a body that you can see. And how does the body go? Let's just traverse that. You can see there is a keyword called query. What would this keyword tell you? It would tell you simply in layman terms, if you think, what does a query do? If you query something, it means you're asking something. So when you're asking for something, it means you want to have something, you want to retrieve or fetch something. So query is the keyword that we use here for retrieving or fetching some kind of data. So this is the query. TV series is your entity name. So what is the entity that you are actually looking for? This is the entity name that you see here. ID, name, and genre. These are the fields that you wish to fetch. And these are precisely the fields that you want to fetch, and you do not want to fetch all the other fields that you see here. And if you see as a response, you would get the entire array. But within that array, if you can see the difference, okay, so here, now in case I want to fetch on a particular book, what do we do in REST API? We do a get call again, but to a different endpoint. So here the endpoint is TV series / the ID / the TV series ID that we want to fetch. So if you want to fetch this particular ID, what you would do is you would simply put it there, and you would get the response for only that particular TV series, which in our case is Sherlock. So 11111 belongs to Sherlock, and that is the only response that we got. Just compare this to GraphQL. If you compare it, again, we are making a post call, which has again a body. It is querying something, it is asking for something, TV series, and within that you can see that we have written the filtration criteria. What do we want is that from this entity called TV series, please fetch me an ID which corresponds to 1111. So here in the brackets, you can simply put in the filtration criteria. And then again, similar to the previous example, you can simply put on the fields that you require. And since here you've ordered or you've requested for 4 fields, so in the response, you're getting all those 4 fields with you. So this was a very basic overview of how exactly GraphQL works, how exactly REST and GraphQL have analogies between them. And let us move towards the origin of GraphQL. Over to you, Arihant.
Sure. So if GraphQL is present, there should be any reason why it came into the picture. So we'll go to next slide. So what prompted the birth of the GraphQL? So back in 2012, when Facebook were working for their mobile application, because entire IT industry was moving towards the mobile. So what they were working on was on an Android and an iOS application. So by getting two different applications, what if they use the rest, the existing functionality that they are using? Because the database was very large, the code was very messy, and if they need to maintain different versions of the same API and different versions for the same query that they want to that the user would be querying, and every time the result would be different. And because of the low bandwidth, one more problem or the challenge that they were facing. So what Dan, Nick, and Lee came up with was a concept of super graph. So they inspired and they make what GraphQL is today. And they planned it to make it open source in 2015, because they had the two more framework and library that was open source, that was React and Relay. Okay, so just talking about the basics of REST and Graph. So in case of REST, if you have multiple devices, what will happen is you need to query the data different IDs for each data. For example, I want to get the IDs. So users ID, if I give a specific ID, then the get call would be different. And for mobile, it would be different. And for post, I need to get, and followers, I need to get. For example, I have one ID with me. I need to get the recent post of that user and the recent followers, who were the followers. So in REST, I need to send three different queries to get the same result. But what I can do with GraphQL is I can just modify my query such that, for example, user with a particular ID, I want its name and the post that the user have posted with the title and the last three followers with their names. Nothing more information is needed. So I can just send it. It would be the same URL. It won't be a different URL for which I need to request. And I would receive a response in the JSON. That would be, the username is Mary, the post was learn GraphQL today, and the last three followers were John, Alice, and Sarah. So that also explains the topic, that nothing more and nothing less, and exactly what we need. Moving on. So these are the high-level GraphQL milestones that helped in evolving. So in Feb 2012, what D, Lan, and Schroff came up with was the super graph, the concept of super graph, in which everything was organized and linked to each other in the form of a graph. And in the same year, in August, they came up with the GraphQL version. That was 1.0. And it later evolved, and Facebook built a complete mobile platform on front of it. And in 2015, the GraphQL was open sourced, and in October 2016, the first GraphQL summit was happened, in which all the developers from different companies and all the freelance developers and everyone was called. They were invited, and the complete GraphQL and how it behaves was launched to them. And till now, it is evolving. It is open source communities and other as well, and Facebook as well are working on it to make it better day by day. Okay, moving on. Okay. So, for example, we have three applications. One is web, some other servers. So what we need to do is, sorry. Yeah. So we have three applications: web, mobile, and other services. So what we need to do is get the payment, product, and users. So in the middle layer, we can have GraphQL. It can interact with REST, other GraphQL queries, DB server, anything could be at the backend. What all these three applications or multiple applications need to do is just interact with the GraphQL, send the queries to it, and on the backend in the GraphQL server, GraphQL will fetch all the data for you and bring it back in the form that you need in the more readable form. Problem statement. Before moving forward, do we have any questions till now?
I guess we have one question that I see.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly answer that. Yeah, so the first question that I see is that is everything here with posts? So yes, everything is with post, and how exactly GraphQL work is that there is a super URL that you see, there is a super host that you see, which is just one endpoint, that is the super endpoint. And the super endpoint only uses post, and whatever customizations you want to make, that would only happen in terms of your request body. So your request body, all those things can get changed, but at the end of the day, it would just be a post call. Does that answer the question?
Yes, we have one more question. Om Prakash just asked, can we combine GraphQL with REST? Uh, I'm not sure what do you mean by combination. We can build GraphQL over REST. We can use REST at the backend, and on the front end, when the client is asking, he can use the GraphQL query to answer, and in the backend, the REST can fetch all the answers and get back the response. So
Yeah,
does
to
that
add
answer?
on to what Arihan said, so the project that I'm working on right now, it has a BFF layer, which is backend for front end. So the UI interacts with the BFF using GraphQL calls, and then the BFF interacts with the stubs using the REST APIs. So that is how the architecture could be. So you can have an hybrid system wherein you can use GraphQL plus REST APIs. You cannot combine them as such, but you can use them one over the other. Do we have any more questions?
There's a raised hand from Deepika.
Yeah, I just want to know, this uses only JSON format only, the GraphQL?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so for the demo, what the problem statement? Okay, I'll just go back to the presentation. Okay, so we have one problem statement. What we want to do from the app that we build is, it's just a small app. So what we want to do, we we need to get some attributes like books and authors. Uh, we need to get the attributes like book ID and author ID that is unique to each book and each author. We need to create some new books and authors, update some existing authors or books, and delete a book and author if that's not needed. So what if we do it via REST? So if we do it via REST, for example, we have browser in React, and to get all the books, we would have a domain like domain.com. Domain could be anything that we are using. Books. This would get me all the books. For example, I need to get a single book with a particular ID. So I would have a different URL for that. That would be domain.com/books/ID. And same is for the authors. If I need to get all the authors, I would have a get call for domain.com/authors. And if I need to get a single author, then it would be domain.com authors /ID. So what if I use graph over here? So Pragati, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Arihant. Okay, so let's just see how do we traverse this graph. So we talked about it works on the graph technology. Then let's just see how the graph is being traversed. So we see a simple call here. We have dealt with this in the very starting slides as well. So let's just go through this particular thing. So what is it doing is it is asking for a book which has an ID 1. We want to fetch the title and genre. Okay, so this is the book with ID 1. We want to fetch title and genre, and we want to fetch the author for this particular book, ID 1. Within that author, we need to get the name of the author and the age of the author and the other books that the author has written, and we need to get the names of those books and just the name and nothing else, like no title, no genre, nothing else. So let's just see how do we traverse this using this graph. Let's just go to the book with ID 1. So if you see here, this is the book with ID 1. What do we want to fetch is the title and the genre of the book and the author. So if you see, there is the relationship that we see here of this book with this author. So within the author, we are fetching the name and the age of the author. And then what do you want to have is the rest of the books. So what all are the other relations that the author has? It has relation with these 3 books. So you would be fetching the titles for book 1, book 2, and book 3. So this is how you traverse, and you can actually have a lot of nesting and a lot of relational queries only using this particular structure. And of course, this depends upon just one thing that you need to have in your code, which is your schema. So whatever is there in your schema, so everything is schema driven. If your schema has such relationships which are as complex as you see in this graph, so you can actually have everything at one place at your schema level, and then you are simply good to make a query and good to fetch data according to the schema. Okay, let's just quickly do this. So how are the HTTP methods in REST analogical to the GraphQL keywords? So GraphQL has two keywords. It has a query and a mutation. So we talked about query a lot, right? So query simply means that you want to fetch, you want to ask for something, you are retrieving some kind of data. And like a question was raised that do we have everything in post? Yes, it also clearly signifies that this is a post call, but the keyword that you use here is query. So essentially, whatever is getting done using your get method in REST will be done using your query and a post method when it comes to GraphQL. Now coming on to the other keyword, which is mutation. So if you literally see, mutation means changes. So whatever change you want to make in your resource, you would do that using a keyword called mutation. So what all are the different changes that you usually do in your resource? You update your resource, you delete your resource, you add a new resource. So these are all the changes that you do you actually make in your server side or on your database side. So whatever HTTP methods, post, patch, put, delete, whatever can be achieved using these methods can be achieved using a keyword called mutation and with your HTTP method called post. Okay, so let's just move to the demo. Before moving to the demo, if there are any quick questions that we can take for like a minute or so, you can possibly raise your hands or drop in the question answers box. Okay, I guess we are good to move to the demo part then. All right, so this is a little application that we've made for the demo. So let me just walk you through what exactly is getting achieved using this. So you can see there is a client, there is a server. Regression is something we would come at a very later stage. So let's just have a look at the client and the server. So just to give you a brief outlook as to what all other technologies used here. On the client side, we have used React. On the server side, we have used Node.js. And for making the database connection, we have used MongoDB. So if I can quickly show you. So this is the database that we're using. Within the database, you can see there are two collections. One is for the authors and the other one is for the books. So in the books, you would see that all the documents of the book would get loaded here. And similarly in the authors, all the documents for the authors would get loaded. So this is certain data that I already have in my database. So you would see that here is a book with a name, with a genre and an author ID. And how do we do the relation? So you would go to the author's document. And within the author's document, you would see certain fields that pertain to the author. So that could be name, that could be age, and then the author ID. So these are the three fields that we are primarily looking at. So there is name, there's age, and there is the object ID, which in our case is the author ID. So this is the database. So both my client and the server side are up. So let's just see. Okay, so before that, let me show you. So I talked about that everything is schema driven, right? So let's just quickly walk you through how exactly the schema works. Okay, so we have two entities like we talked about in the problem statement. We have a book and we have an author. So you would see here two entities. There is book. We talked about queries. Where do we use queries? We use queries in order to fetch data. And in the problem statement also, we said that we want to have queries in 4 formats. One is that if I want to fetch a particular book. Second, if I want to fetch a particular author. Third, if I want to fetch all the books that are available in my database. And fourth, if I want to fetch all the authors that are available in my database. So whatever I said, going on with that one by one. So if you see here, this is the first root query that you see. We would not go that much deep into the code. Let's just see how the schema works. So this is the keyword. So just look at the keywords as of now. So this is a book keyword. And if you clearly see the argument that it takes is an ID, and it will tell you that, okay, it is fetching a book using the ID. Similarly, the author, if you see here, the arguments that it takes is just an ID, which is that you want to fetch an author using an ID. Coming on to the next one. So these are the bulk calls. it is finding you all the books which are available in your database. And on the similar lines, you're fetching all the authors that are available in the database. So these are the 4 queries that we can possibly use. And schema defines all those 4 queries and how we are interacting these queries and how these queries are fetching data from your database. Coming on to the mutations. So we talked about mutations. So what does a mutation do? It means a certain amount of change. So here you can see we have added 6 mutations. So you can add an author, you can delete an author, you can update an author. And then similarly, you can add a book, you can delete a book, and you can update the book as well. So the first mutation that you see here, let's again focus on the keywords, because these are the keywords that we would have to use while actually hitting the GraphQL query or mutation. Okay, so the keyword that you see here is add author. What does it do is, as the name suggests, it would simply add a particular author using certain attributes. So the attributes here are name and age. Similarly, if you want to add a book, your attributes would be name, genre, and author ID. So these were the additions. So if I compare this again to the rest, if you want to create a new resource, you would use a post author and a post book call. But here we would be using post calls for sure, but that is the only method that we use in GraphQL. But you would be using certain different keywords. In our case, we would be using a keyword called mutation and the other keyword called either add book or add author according to the use case that we want to perform. Then coming on to update author, again, as the name suggests, updation would update the resource. Let me just compare this again to the REST API. What does it do is, in REST, you can do a put or a patch, right? So depending upon that, you can do an update author and an update book. So these are the 2 keywords that you need to keep in mind whenever we want to. So all of these are customizable. So the code that we have written this as update book. You can use it as update B. So it depends upon how you're using, but whatever keyword you would put here or whatever literal you would use here is the same that you would use in your requests. All right, coming on to delete. So there is delete author and delete book. I guess by now you would definitely be familiar with which method it is relating to in REST. So like we use delete in REST for deleting a resource. Similarly, you will see there is delete author. In case you want to delete an author, what attribute does it use? It uses an attribute called author ID. You can simply put in an author ID in the filtration criteria and it would delete the author pertaining to that particular author ID. Similarly, for deleting a book, you just need the book. You just need the book ID. That's it. Nothing else is needed. I guess the schema part is more or less clear. Any quick questions? Let's just take questions. If there are any quick questions on the schema part, because after that we'll be doing how do we actually hit the request and how do we use GraphQL, which is a very important feature of GraphQL. Before jumping onto that, any quick questions that you think would be answered at this point of time? In case there are any, please keep on dropping the questions in the Q&A section. All right, so let me move on to how exactly we use another thing. So like I told, the server and the client are up and running. So let's just go to the application straight away. I showed you the database part of it. Now let me show you the client part. So this is the client part of it. So like we said, we had this problem statement with us. We have authors, we have books, and we are meddling around those things by creating it, by updating it, by deleting those things. So this is how our application looks like, right? But what is happening at the back end? So this is the server side of it. The best part and the beauty of GraphQL is that it is self-documented. There is just one plugin that you would have to perform or you would have to add, which is GraphQL. And GraphQL, it is open source and it would give you the entire documentation and you can simply put in your queries and mutations and then perform different actions. So like you do in Postman, right? Whenever you want to actually do a REST query, so you make some development, you do some development on your local and you simply use that endpoint and make some calls. Similarly, you do not even have to go there because GraphQL is an inbuilt plugin and you can simply host it on your local and you're good to go. You have the entire documentation here. You are good to perform whatever action. So you would actually have the first-hand experience of how exactly your API is working. Okay, so let me first walk you through what exactly this entire screen means. Okay, so if you see on the right hand side, there is this documentation explorer. A lot of you would have worked with Ramls and Swaggers, which are documentation for REST APIs. So we do not need anything on the top of it when we work with the GraphQL API, because like I said, this is an inbuilt feature that it has. Okay, so we talked about queries, right? And we talked about mutations. Let us see, does it even provide those documentation that we talked about in the schema level? Okay, so I went to the query, and you can see there are 4 queries, and these are precisely the queries that we talked about in the schema. If you just want to have a comparison, so root query type, right? And here are the keywords. There is book, there is author, there are books, and there are authors. Similar to this, in the documentation, also you can see these are the 4 keywords that are used here. Within that, you can see there are the different fields or the attributes that are being used for different kinds of keywords that we have. Similarly, let's just go to the mutation. We talked about 6 mutation, right? So what do we need to have here is all those 6 mutation intact. All right, so I guess we have all those 6. So we have add author, and like we talked about, we want the name, we want the age. On the similar pattern, we have add book. Similarly, update author, update book, and then delete author, delete book. Everything is there in your documentation explorer, which means that you need not go back to the schema and verify, okay, am I writing the right query? Am I writing the right keyword or not? So this is how you would traverse this documentation explorer part. Okay, so let me, and yes, Prettify, like what do we do is we usually go to JSON Lint and different online sites to have our JSON all up to date and prettified. But here you have this inbuilt. Then the history shows you all the different commands that you had executed earlier. And this thing, of course, this is just for hitting the query over. So this is for executing your query. All right, so let me just take you to the database and show you. Okay, let me go to the books. So I have one particular book which does not have an author ID. So let's just try to do something with that. Okay, let me just create or add a book without the author ID, and let's just perform certain actions. Okay, before that, okay, we can just take questions. Okay, I guess we have some questions. Let's just open the questions for like 2 minutes before we jump onto this, because it's going to get better from here. Aryan, do you see any questions?
Yeah, there's one question. Do we have a mechanism to maintain referential integrity in DB?
So the DB, yeah, you can go ahead and answer.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the interaction with the DB remains as is. So whatever can be achieved using REST APIs, similar things can be achieved using GraphQL. There is nothing different. The only difference is how you actually do the interaction between the client and the server. Whatever interaction happens between your server and your database remains as is. Whatever is achievable would be achievable using GraphQL as well. I hope that answers. Aryan, in case you want to add something.
No, that was fine. That was the only question that we had. This is very specific to delete query. Sorry. What exactly is your question? Can you please open mic? Can we take your question at the last, Om Prakash, if you don't mind? Okay, sure. Can we send nested queries in GraphQL? Sure, we can send nested queries in GraphQL.
And we would be showing that to you in a while as well.
Sure. Okay, and yeah, that was all. Pragati, please continue.
Okay, yeah. So let's just move on. So I'm going ahead with creating a book that does not have an author. So let me create a book, okay. Okay, so let's just see how do we, okay, so before jumping to that, let's just see how do we query. Let me just first try to get all the books that I have. Okay, so for doing that, this will give you a better idea of how exactly GraphQL is interactive. So I am typing and I'm getting different suggestions. So query is the first suggestion that I got. Okay, what do I need to do is I need to fetch all the books, right? Okay, so books is the other suggestion I got. Within the books, what do I need to have? Okay, I need to have the ID, I need to have the name, and maybe the genre as well. So let me try hitting this and let's see what result do we get. So if you see, we have got a data node, and within the data node, we have different books. So these are the different books that you see. And if you see, I have the name, ID, and genre in the exact same order that I demanded. Let me try and put ID above name, and let's just see what happens. So the order also persists. Does not matter in what order your resource resides. It would get you the order in which the client demands the order to be. So if it is ID, name, and genre, you would get the data in the same ordering. If I change the order, then the order would get changed in the response as well. If I write name twice, it would simply fetch the uniqueness and then get me the responses. So that is how I got all the books. Let's just try to get a particular book. In lieu of time, let's just do it using an existing history query. Okay, so this ID does not exist. So what would it give you? That data book null, because this node does not exist. Let's go back to our database and fetch something that we know exists. Let me try fetching this book called Secrets of Nagas. All right, so
Actually, you copied author ID.
yeah, right. Which also means that it works. It does not work with the author ID. There's not a hack that we have done. Okay, so we have got the name, and let's just try to do one more thing. Like we talked about nesting queries, right? I have author, within which I want to have the name of the author. And then the books that the author has written. And within that, I want to have the names of the books that the author has written. All right, so like we talked about the nesting part of it. So we have the name of the book corresponding to this particular ID. You can check this using this database as well. It was Secrets of Nagas. It was written by Amish, and these are the different books that he has written apart, including the Secrets of Naga. So these are the other two books. Let's just draw a parallelism to the graphs that we talked about, right? Traversal of the graph, this one. It is something which is similar to this, right? We are getting the book using ID, we are getting the author, we are nesting the books in the author so as to get all the relation book, whatever book has a relationship with this particular author. And we would fetch everything which is here. All right, so you can see that how interactive this particular GraphQL thing is. Now let's try doing a particular use case. I'll simply create a book without an author ID. Then I'll create an author. I'll update the book by attaching that author ID to that particular book. And then we'll simply delete both the author and the book. So we'll be at the scratch position where we would start with. So let's just try doing this thing. Okay, so for adding a book, you know what we want to use is a mutation and not a query, because there is a change that we are making. So here is the keyword mutation. What do you want to do? You want to add a book. Okay, for our simplification, let's just go to the mutation, add book, and let's see what all is required. So there is name, genre, and author ID. So name, I'll just, okay, so monk who sold his Ferrari. All right, then I want to have the genre. So the genre is metaphysical. And then the author ID is nothing. Right, and what I need to get is the name and the ID so that I can use the ID. Let's just hit this, and now we have this book called Monk Who Sold His Ferrari created here. Let's just go and refresh the database and see if that gets created. Okay, so we can see we have the newly added book here. We have the name, we have the genre. There is no author ID because we did not provide any. All right, so the other thing that we wanted to do is to create an author. So again, utilizing the effectiveness of GraphQL, I'll simply put in. So let's go here. There is name and age. So just name and age are required. So the name is okay, and the age I'll just put on a random age. So within this, you need the ID and you need the name. All right, so you can see it gives the syntax errors as well. It is again given because it is of int type and not a string type. So just to let you know that all of this intelligence is imbibed already. So it makes our lives much easier when it comes to testing and development. Okay, so let me just hit this call real quick. So our author has also gotten created. Okay. So if you want me to go to the database and check if it has actually gotten created or not. So we created R Sharma with age 56. The age is also not changed, not the name. And the ID is the same. Okay, now the next step that we wanted to do is we wanted to update the book. Let's just see from documentation. For updating the book, you need all these 4 things. So again, it is a mutation. You want to do what? You want to update the book. For that, you need the name of the book. I'll simply copy it from here itself. Or even better, I can use the history feature. So change this genre would remain same. The author ID is the one that we created. And what else do we need is the book ID. So book ID is something that we can fetch from here. The monk who sold his Ferrari, the book ID is this. So I've gotten the book ID. I am simply putting it here. I have changed the keyword from add book to update book and used the query, the mutation from the history itself in the interest of time. All right, so name, ID, let's just see that the author gets attached also, right? Author's name and age. Looks good. Okay, so update book worked. So name this, author is this. Now do you see? Now this author R Sharma that we created previously has gotten attached to our newly created book. So we have looked at creation, we have looked at updation. Now let's move on to the deletion part of it. For deletion, we simply require ID and for author also and for book also. So let's just first delete the author. I have grabbed the ID. Again, making another mutation since this is a change that we are doing. What you want to do is you want to delete the author. What do you need for that? You need the author ID for that. Did this and now if you would try to fetch the name, it would be null because it does not exist. Similarly, let me delete the book as well.
Pragati, before fetching the book, before deleting the book, can you please fetch the book so that we can
see if it is null?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just see the author's database also. So now we no longer see R Sharma with age 56 in the database as well. In the okay, now let's just go here and before deleting the book, we can make a query. So you want to fetch a book, you want to fetch it using the ID. The ID is here. Okay, so I'll simply put it here. What do we want? We want the name, and now we wanted the author and the name of the author. So it shows that the author object is null since we have deleted the author. Using the same ID for deletion. Now, like we discussed, for deletion, we have to trigger a mutation again. But here it would be delete book and not delete author. Book ID. So the one that I use as to make the query, the same ID I'll use. Fetching the name, now I should get a null because it has gotten deleted. So this is the entire workflow, and let me just summarize quickly what we did here. We started off by doing some creation calls for a book and an author. Moved on to attaching the author with the book using an update book call. And then we deleted both the book and the author. So that is all in all what we did. I guess we have a couple of questions here now.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly read some question. Can we perform multiple actions in a single query like add, update, etc.? First of all, since it's a query, so what you can do is just get for adding and updating, that would be a mutation, and that is a separate part. Plus, you can add something in one mutation. You can't update in single query because update and add would be different kinds of mutation. That the keywords would be different that we would be using. So I think so that answers your questions, right?
Yeah, to add to what Arihan said, but the kind of combination that you're looking for, maybe like a kind of absurd that you were saying in this case, that could still be achievable if you make the necessary combinations in your schema. So if I go back to the schema and if I have a mutation called absurd book, right? And if I want to add and I want to update also, so here you can do the necessary things you want to do in the code, and you can have that particular keyword attached to the absurd operation. So that is possible, but only when you make changes to schema.
The second question we have is it feasible for you? Can you some examples like how you can test authentication with GraphQL?
Test authentication.
I think so. Authentication is same with as we test with the REST. It's a UUID that we get, and on that basis we can authentify and also give permissions to the user. For example, what the user is capable of doing to the system. What is the permission for the user? Both can be managed by the UUID. That is same as REST.
Yeah,
Cool.
precisely. Do we have any other questions? Good to move forward. All right. So we talked about the server side of it. Now let's jump towards the client side of it. So we as testers, what do we get? We usually get to test or maybe two API automation and UI automation both. So here we talked about how to interact with the APIs, how to get well versed with the API part of it. Now let's see how the UI and API interaction happens. So for that, let's quickly do this. Okay, so I'll simply try to show you how the network calls happen. So here, what does this app do? If I select a particular book, you will see that all the data has gotten fetched for this book. How does that happen? You see here, we have GraphQL. I'll just expand this for everyone's convenience. Let's just see what went. Doing it to view source. First, let's just see in the parsed version. The operation name is getBook. The variable that you're using here is that particular book ID that I talked about. The query is the exact query that we fired on our server side. So this is the exact same thing that you saw there with the variables. So because these variables can change on the basis of the different books that I select, so the ID would change. So this is parameterized. So if you would see here, this is parameterized here. Let me go to the preview section. So here you have got the entire response. So you have the book. Within the book, you have genre and ID. Then you have the author. You have the age of the author. Again, we talked about nesting, right? So this is the nesting that you could see here. Within the books, you can see the different books that this particular writer has written. So it can go to the nth level of nesting if you want to talk about it. Okay, let's just try. Okay, so this is it. So this was the kind of query. Similar thing can be achieved using mutation. So when we actually test GraphQL queries, we have to be very sure that only those variables are getting passed which are being used. We do not want to have redundant variables sent over the network. And whatever attributes are required, only those attributes are getting sent in the query as well. So we have to be very sure when we test things. So now here, this is a query of adding a book. So let me add a book. Book A, genre can be fiction. And as soon as I do this, okay, so I did this and you can see that book A, okay, I'll just, you can see that book A got added. So if we think logically what happened, we added a book and then for adding a book, you would do a mutation, which is add, so we added a book, add book mutation would be done. And then you are again getting all the books. So 2 GraphQL queries should get fired. So here is the first GraphQL query that you see, add book. All the attributes that we wanted to send, we got the preview. The other one is for getting all the books, right? Whereas we are fetching the bulk response. And here you get all the different books. So this is the client side of it. Yeah, so the interaction happens like that. And so we have to be very sure when this interaction happens that all the relevant data, all the relevant queries or mutations are getting triggered with the relevant amount of fields which are required. No unnecessary fields should be there as a part of the query or mutation. So this was the client part, and as I said, this was the server part. Let's move on further. Over to you, Arihant.
Sure. Cool. So we have talked about how it is different from REST. So just we can draw a simple and a quick comparison between both of them, the difference between Graph and REST. So talking about the architectural difference, so GraphQL is client driven and REST is server driven. You might have noticed till now that whatever the client needs, it is getting delivered by GraphQL, while REST is server driven. What we have in server, we can fetch everything in terms of that. And GraphQL is organized, it is very strict towards schema and the type system, whereas REST is mainly because of the endpoints. It has different endpoints for the same, for different entities. In GraphQL, we can define it via schema and type system. The operations that we can do in GraphQL are query, mutation, and subscription. We are mainly talking about query and mutation. Subscription is an advanced part of it, and currently very few organization or none I think 1 or 2 organizations use it. So we are not talking about it. And in REST, the main queries are create, read, update, and delete. Okay. So data fetching is very specific to the API call, and we can just iterate any data, iterate any order in which we want the data. While in REST, it is fixed, and we need to send multiple calls if we need customized data that is not present. Okay, so the community of GraphQL is growing, whereas REST is already very large. The performance, if we can compare this, the performance is fast of GraphQL. If you can compare it with REST, for example, in REST, if you want to hit 3 queries, it could take time of 3T, whereas in the graph, you just need to send 1 query. So the time difference would be always there. And development speed with GraphQL would be rapid, because you just need to change the schema. Once you have defined the complete schema, you just need to change it, iterate it, and then you're good to go. You can test it, you can deploy it, you can do anything. Whereas in REST, it is slower comparatively. Learning curve, I could say it is difficult because currently you need if you know REST, you need to understand the schema and everything. And once you know, it's a cakewalk for you. And for REST, it would be moderate. In REST, you don't get self documentation, whereas in Graph, you get it. Pragati just showed it to you. Currently, file uploading is not supported in GraphQL. You can use different plugins for that. That comes out of the box. Whereas in REST, it is supported. Same as with the web caching, it is currently not supporting with GraphQL because you can have different queries. With the REST, it is supported. For web caching too, you can use different plugins that are third-party plugins. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the advantages of GraphQL. It is a very good fit for complex system and microservices, because in microservices, what do you need to do? You need to fetch data from different endpoints, and you need to do any data small basically. And with one endpoint, you can do multiple things that makes it a good fit. And while fetching the data, you need a simple single API call. This is the example of Graph and REST. For example, if you need to post or create something, you would have one endpoint and one handler function for it. delete is same, get, put, you can have 4 endpoints like that. But in GraphQL, you can just have one, and in the backend, Graph will do all the things for you. Moving on. Okay, so more advantages of GraphQL would be no more under or overfetching. You can get whatever you need. This is already explained. I don't think so anyone would be having any doubts on it. The next is tailoring your request needs. So as you can just tailor your request whatever you need. You want the ID or name, or you want both, or you want ID first or name second. That can go to multiple variables that you want. So you can tailor your request according to the need. Validation and type check-ins come out of the box. As Pragati showed you, if that schema doesn't, if the keyword doesn't match to the schema, you would get a validation. You would get a type check, and it would also suggest you. Auto-generating API documentation, this we have already talked about. API without evolution without versioning. So the great advantage that GraphQL offers is you don't need different versions for it to deploy. You can just change the schema, and once everything is done, you can just expose it, or you can just, the users can use it when it's built on the UI. You can just link it with the UI, and it would start working. You don't need version 1.2 and then 1.1 for or 2.0 for the same. Detailed error messages. Okay, so all the requests that we send via GraphQL, we get a same status code, that is 200 OK. So you can, if there are some failures, what we can do, what you can do is you can get tailored specific error messages that we can get, and that could be generalized message that something is not working, server is down, or anything like that. And with because of that, the debugging also becomes easier. Permissions, we have already talked about it. Permissions we can do via the UUID or the user ID. According to that, we can according to that, we can just give permission to the user what he's capable of doing to the system or not. And additional operation is subscription. So what we can understand subscription is, it's kind of a rapid polling. So just to give you a gist of it, what it is, for example, we can consider Slack as a tool that we're using. So we don't refresh Slack to if any messages come or we send any messages. So it could be a part of subscription. So what it happens is, in the backend, it constantly keeps on polling to check if the user has received any new messages or not. If they have, it would just automatically show. That that is a high level idea of what subscriptions are. Rapid application prototyping would be, since you have built your prototype now, you can just develop on your schema and you can build upon your schema. That would help you. Moving on. So yeah, it also have some disadvantages. So if you have a very complex query, then the performance issue can be there. For example, you need everything of every query that you have. Then there could be some performance issues. Working for small applications would be, if you don't have a complex system, or you're not sure that your system would grow in the future, and you build the schema and GraphQL over it, it could be, it won't be that beneficial, or it's not recommended. But if you know that your application is going to expand in the future, or it is going to be better, or more complexity is going to be added, then it is definitely not a disadvantage. Web caching complexity, right now caching is not supported out of the box. You need third-party plugins or applications for it. Then caching is supported. Same as with file uploading. Currently, file uploading is not supported out of the box by GraphQL, and you need third-party plugins for that. And it takes a while to understand, but once you get a gist of it, it's a cakewalk. Okay. I think Pragati, I'm not able to change the slide.
I do it.
Sure. Okay. Guys, do you have any questions?
I
And
guess.
before that,
Did you get one?
yeah, we got one. That is, please let me know any big company other than Facebook using GraphQL. Yeah, GitHub is using GraphQL. Twitter is using GraphQL.
A
Many.
very relevant question, I had already this in place somehow. So here are all the companies that you can see.
The companies that are using the modern tech stack are mostly using GraphQL.
I'll ping this here as well. On the chat, you can just have a look and go through this website. Any other questions, or should we go ahead?
There is one, how to test the GraphQL. Okay, so we'll just cover it up via Postman, and what are the areas to test, what does you get, what does you use, just JS frame, which way JS framework. Okay, so React and Relay can be used for the JS framework for the UI, and how we are going to test it, we are just going to answer that. So Pragati, can you just show the Postman how we have tested the
Before that, let's just first have a look at the slide for like 30-40 seconds max, and then we'll quickly move on to the short demo for Postman for this, and then we can actually combine them with the project that I showed you, the client server thing. So we can combine that with our project as well. Okay, let's just simply see. So if I talk in like simple terms, there is not much, not even much. There is no difference when you actually test a GraphQL API in comparison to a REST API. There are different tools that you would see like Postman, Ready API, which are providing you with a different method of testing GraphQL. By method, I mean a different interface. That is it. At the backend, everything is as is. It is sending the request as a JSON itself and nothing else. But if I talk about certain other tools like Rest Assured and Karate and Cypress, for that, what you have to do is you would have to bind your query, that particular query that you see, this thing. So the query that we saw here, so you have to bind that as a JSON object, and then you would have to pass that over. Okay, so if you would see here, what is the main thing is the schema validation. So usually when you test a REST API, what do? You do a schema validation on the basis of your documentation. So in case I want to fetch, supposedly in our case, if I want to fetch a user or a book or an author, the schema validation you would do would be in comparison to the documentation that you have. That could be a Swagger documentation. But in case of GraphQL, the schema validation that you would do would be in terms of your request body and not in terms of your documentation. Because as your request body would change, the schema would get changed according to the fields that you're using. So there would be different required fields when it comes to you using different request bodies in GraphQL. Assertions. So usually, the second point definitely depends upon the way you built your GraphQL calls. But most of all, and the best practices says that every GraphQL request should send you a 200 OK. Irrespective of the case that it gives you errors, but it would always send you a 200 OK. The only difference that you would see is that when you would get data, you would only get one node, which is your data node. But if you would get errors, you would get two nodes. One would be your data node and the other would be your error node. So these would be the two nodes that you would see. So if you want to see if your call failed or did not fetch the required result, you would actually look for the error node and nothing else. Coming on to the third point, so mostly we use the post method, but there are certain security breaches that happen because of the post, because SQL injections can get embedded in that. So a lot of security vulnerabilities happen. So GraphQL has extended this to get calls as well. So if I simply talk about the post part, so do not rely on the method in case of GraphQL. Rely on the keywords. Rely on query, mutation, and subscription keyword that you have. Apart from that, assertions on data that you make, you have to make a lot of permutation combinations. Because if I talk about REST, it would get you the entire resource, right? It does not have a lot of combinations going on. But in case of GraphQL, if I even change the ordering, my response would change for sure. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So like I've written, assertions on ordering can also be validated. So let me quickly show you all these 5 points as a part of the testing. Okay, so here, let's just start one by one. So this is the collection that I've made. Let me walk you through this entire thing. This is a post method that you see here. This is the exact thing, exact endpoint that we were using in GraphQL. If I go to GraphQL, see this endpoint, this is the endpoint that I'm using, and these are the queries and all, query parameters. And this is the super endpoint that I talked about. So there is just one endpoint, and what is changing is your request body. Let me go to Postman. Okay, so this is the post method we talked about. So you would see there is a body. This body is exactly the same that we used in GraphQL, right? So you have a query, you have a book, you are fetching the ID, right? You're fetching this book with this particular book ID, and what you want to fetch is the name and the ID of the book. I'll hit the call and show you. Okay, so we have got the result, we have got the name and the ID. Let us see now. Everybody was interested to know that how exactly do we test this thing over. Okay, so do you see this is a beta version that Postman has released. So if you see, this is not a please go ahead and do this, but you can simply try it out for yourself. A lot of people would not encourage you to do that, as in to use that in your projects as of now, because it is not that stable. But still, if you want to go ahead and make some observations around it, you're just free to go, and of course you should explore this. Let's just go to the test part of it. Okay, so like I talked about, this is something which is kind of irrelevant in our case, because I talked about that 200 OK is something that you would get every time. So you can simply skip this test. So I have put it here only to tell you that you can skip this. The other thing that remains same, so the data assertions, they would remain same. So here what I'm doing is I am simply checking that my data is correct. Okay, so presence of fields. So what is important here is the presence of fields. Because if I have provided here name and ID, what I should get is only the name and ID and nothing else. Okay, let me just try adding another field, which was genre, right? So this test case should fail because this does not exist. So you can see the test results, 3 out of 4 passed and 1 failed, because genre was not a key present in our response. So this could be one of the test case that you can actually use when you take care of your GraphQL, that your keys should only be the ones that you have used in your request. Nothing more, nothing less. We would keep on repeating this over till you get fed up of this particular phrase. Okay, so this is done. The other most important thing is schema validation, right? So what I've done is I have made the schema with respect to this particular request. So your request should have a response in this format only. So if you would go and have a look at the schema. Okay, so if you see here, okay, so these are certain examples that are there. Then additional properties, that what your book has, what are the required fields. So this is something which is important for us to see. Here the required fields are only ID and name, right? And that is what we are getting. Let me just compare this to another thing that I have made. Here, my required fields are much more than ID and name. So in my schema, that would be the difference. So in my schema, I would have additional fields as well as my required fields. So your schema would differ, again, I would repeat, would differ according to your response. Right? So after that, so there is this TV4 function. It is a JS function. So child library is used here. So we do that for validation of schema. So I am comparing the JSON data that we are getting with the schema that I have written above. And it's very easy for us to generate schemas. So you can simply fetch this or fetch a very valid response that you know is correct. You can pass this. So there is this tool called schema generator. You can pass this here. You would get the entire schema generated here for you. Pretty easy. You just have to copy this and simply go to your Postman case and declare this as a variable. So you'll declare schema as a variable and you are good to go and do the schema validation quite easily. Okay, apart from that, we talked about order, right? So we talked about that if it is name and ID, so your response should be name and ID and not ID and name. So the order would remain intact. So I had written another test case wherein I am checking that the order is correct. So I am logging the certain key value pairs. For checking the logs, I'll just open this up. And I'll quickly correct the test case I had played around with. I guess I had corrected that earlier itself. Okay, I'll just hit it again. All right, so all of them have passed. So if you would see the order also here. So in the console log, you can see that name and then ID, right? So you can have a particular case that checks the ordering of your fields. So we talked about, we said that essentially testing a REST API and testing a GraphQL API are same. And why do we say that, right? So instead of using that GraphQL beta version that Postman has provided us, we tried using it using application JSON. And you would ask me that from where did you get this particular format? Quite easy. Let me go back to the client side. Let me show you the command. So we already know that these are the different calls, how the calls happen. Go here, look at the view source. This is the entire JSON that I copied and used here. What you would have to get removed with, you would have to remove all these extra /ns, all the spacings and all you would have to provide. You'll have to customize it a little, but that's it. That's the only amount of work you would have to do. Go here, paste it. This would work as if you're testing a REST API and nothing else. So this is precisely the JSON that we usually do. Endpoint is intact, right? And I told you that this is a super endpoint, right? Why do I say that? Because everywhere I'm using the same endpoint. In every other call, I'm using the same endpoint. The only thing that you would see changing is my request body. Okay, coming on to the one wherein we are doing it using application JSON. So this is the JSON body we're using. Test, more or less the same. So schema validations and all are there. The schema validations would be different here. Like I said, because there are different fields which are required now. Now there are more fields which are required in this case. So you would have to add a different kind of schema. So I'll have to quickly grasp this and then go to schema validator tool. So this is precisely the data I'm talking about. And this is the schema that got generated for this. So I used this. I had put that in a variable. And then we were good to go. All right, let's move on. Like I told you now, what would differ is not your HTTP methods, but your keywords. We talked about the query keyword. Now we'll talk about the mutation keyword. So for your mutation keyword, I have added a book and it would work simply as is. So what you would see here is I've done one thing, that I have added this book without the author, right? I'll simply send it over. All my test cases have gotten passed. What I've done is, let me just quickly walk you through the test cases. Status, like I said, it is not relevant enough. Data assertions, we've done that. Presence of field is something we should definitely do. Schema validations, a big thumbs up. And ordering is a must to have for GraphQL calls. Okay, after having done all these, what I've done is I have added the book ID as the global variable here. And I'm using the same book ID here. Okay, so if I show you the body of my next call, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fetch that book that I created in my previous call, right? I am trying to fetch that, and while fetching it, there's something that you would see. Now, this is an error scenario. So we talked about the fact that even when you get an error, you would still get a status of 200 OK. So what we're getting here is 200 OK with an error node and a data node. What does the error node says? That this ID for this model cannot be cast. So this is an error that we actually see. It's not taking that particular parameterization in a way. For that, if you see, what I'm doing is I'm checking the presence of the error and data nodes. This would tell me that yes, this is a failure scenario. And then you can simply see that, okay, this exists. This. Coming to the whole circle of it, in the very beginning, I said we'll talk about regression later. So here, the collection that you saw here, the one that had those 4 endpoints, you can enhance this test suite to your entire application, to your entire API suite that you have. You can test the different calls that we made. Calls in the sense, different queries, different mutations and everything. And simply, okay, so how do I do it? I simply export this as a JSON. It's very easy. It's very easy for us to export this as a JSON. I can simply export it. And I had saved it here. So now within the regression suite, you can see your automation suite is also in place. And if I show you, I had run this. So if you run this, so you can see, so you just need a Newman runner and nothing else. You just need to execute 2 commands for it to run on your particular suite or your project level. So you'll install Newman, and then you can simply do Newman run and your Postman collection name. That's it. And then it would validate the entire assertions that we had made. And then you'll get a report of it, that all your 15 assertions have passed. So this brings us to the complete circle. So we started off by doing the demo of this particular application. And then we went on to how we as quality analysts can actually add on to this, how we can understand GraphQL in a much better and in a depth way, so that it's easier for us to test that as well. Because unless and until we do not understand what's happening at the background, it's very difficult for us to find out loopholes. And then we are ready with our automation suite as well, which is good for us to expand and maintain as well. And yes, we are good to go. I guess we're open for questions now.
Do we have any questions? Please feel to reach out, raise hands, or post it in Q&A. Also, I have shared the link for the feedback for the session. Please feel to share your feedback with us.
Any quick questions that you people have? You can raise hands. It would be easier for us if you guys raise hand and speak up. Would be more interactive also. It's difficult for us to have this monologue going on.
Okay, so the regression reports are logged only in command terminal.
Which one? The regression reports?
Yeah.
No. You can actually have, so this is specific to Postman and nothing else. So this is not something which is, this is not a GraphQL question. This is a Postman question instead. So for this, you have different plugins. So you can have different beautiful reports associated with Postman. And you can have these reports generated in Jenkins as well, and as well as in your local. So there are certain plugins that you would have to use, and not just the console. You can have the reports generated on the cloud as well, and on your local as a separate file. HTML reports can also be there.
Cool. I think we don't have any more questions or raise hands. So
Let's just take 2 minutes, I guess, in case anybody wants to ask any question.
Sure. Yes, we have 2 more. As we, Amit has a question, as we have WSDL in SOAP, so how GraphQL schema is different from WSDL, and how easy to migrate from WSDL to GraphQL schema?
Okay, so SOAP uses WSDL, but if you see for the, wait, I'll just show you quickly. So if you see here, so it has the capability of using WSDL as well, but the migration part that you're saying, it is not that easy because it takes a lot of coding behind it, and it's not very easy for us to migrate that. But if you want to start afresh, it's a very big suggestion that let's not go for WSDL, because that is something we're moving away with. But yes, when it comes to security and banking sector, they're still using WSDLs, and you can simply do it. I haven't explored this much, have worked only mostly with the JSON part of it. But yeah, that is quite possible, and the migration is a bit tough and tricky there.
Cool. We have a last question. Are you using HTML reporter with Newman?
Here I am not, but yes, we can. I guess we are good to go. It's already 7:15 as well. Thank you guys for joining in. It was really good to have you all here. I'll stop sharing. Please fill in all the feedbacks of all the sessions that were there. There were like 4 talks. Please be cognizant enough in filling the feedbacks. It's very important for us to improve. And thanks a lot for joining. Any other panelists in case you want to add on something?
No, I think we have reached to the end of the day, and we could see certain soldiers right now as well, which have not laid down their weapons so far till the end of the day. So energy is super notch, and the enthusiasm is super notch over here. So really appreciate and kudos to the overall team for arranging such a knowledge sharing session out there. And thank you very much to all the participants who have taken their very precious time out of their daily busy schedule out and giving this to us so that we can grow more as a community together and reach that common goal out together as well. So as requested by Pragati, kindly fill in those feedbacks, because those are, as I've already said in the keynotes, that those are the soul of thought workers. So we would want to know of what all things that we can improve upon for the next time. So the next batch of people who will be joining as a participants for Vodka should be able to get a better experience than this one. So thank you very much, and feel free to actually put in your thoughts into the feedbacks. Thank you very much, guys.